tell you, if you are already doing a lot of 3D, nothing you're going to hear today is just earth-shattering. This is trying to make sure everybody understands who we are, why we're doing 3D. Some of the little things that we do to make sure that you're successful and make sure kids range set up and those type of things I like to talk about. So nothing's earth-shattering, but at the same time, it is important to make sure everybody's on the same page because it's so different. Those of you that set up a 3D range, that's a different beast. And so it's important that we all do it the same. So we'll go through just real quick and talk about a little bit about who we are. So in 2013, 14, Roy Grimes, of course, then president of NASP, came to Brian Markham, president of IBO, and said, look, in one of our latest surveys, the kids of NASP asked for 3D archery. That's what the reason they're doing it is because the kids asked for it. They wanted 3D archery. So they approached the International Bow Hunting Organization, who's the authority on 3D archery, and said, how can we develop a game that the kids from NASP can play using the same equipment that they have, all the same whistle commands, everything's the same, but we combine our two organizations and stay true to who we are. So they worked on that for a year, and Brian, my boss, the president, basically came up with this design. He came up with the design for the 3D challenge. When they first did it, it was 5 targets and they added a 6, so it'd be better. They were doing 5 targets with 6 arrows, and they realized that don't work. We need 6 targets with 5 arrows, so they changed it after that first year. The first year they actually did a tournament was the national tournament in 2014, and then in 2015 was the first time it went to the states. And I got a slide in here. The first year was like 5 states that did a state 3D. For those of you who do not know me, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Ryan Bass. I'm director of NAS IBO 3D, work for IBO. I'm vice president of IBO now, as well as the director of this. Formerly, I was the state coordinator. I was the NAS state coordinator of South Carolina. I was game warden in South Carolina for 25 years. And right after, did anybody come to Myrtle Beach 2016? And so in 2016, there was NASP World in Myrtle Beach. So I was there. I hosted that for NASP. And that same year is when I got a phone call saying, hey, here you close to retirement. Want another job? And so we worked that out, and I did. I retired, fully retired at 44 years old, and started running around the country putting on archery tournaments for kids. And I can't be more blessed. So I came in 2016. At the end of 2016, and the first year as running tournaments with a trailer was 17. The original plan, which is still today, was to help states run state-level tournaments. All your state coordinators, I don't know what all states we've got represented here. I know Texas is here. Where I'm from? Virginia, Ohio. I mean, we got a bunch of different states here. So you got a bunch of y'all already running state-level tournaments. But as a state coordinator, very few of our state NASP coordinators do NASP only. They're doing NASP, shotgun sports. They're doing hunter ed. They're doing explore bow hunting. They're doing all these different. Well, then all of a sudden, NASP comes out with this new program, NAS IBO 3D. Here, let's do something else. And a lot of times, they don't have the time, the money, the resources to do it. So I reached out to those coordinators, and being a previous coordinator, that was easy contact, and say, hey, in my trailer, I've got everything I need to do a tournament. From registration all the way through the end to awards, I'll do it for you. Would you like to do a state 3D? So the first 2 years, that's exactly what we did. I took the trailer and I ran across the country, as many states as I could during our state tournament season, and performed state level tournaments. Virginia, Ohio, I'm trying to think what all the ones I did that first year, but mainly on the East Coast, very strictly. Well, then after 2 years, we realized I had more states wanting it than I could do during state tournament, not enough weeks in the year or in that state tournament time. So we built another trailer. The other trailer sits here in Missouri. Joel and Christy Zimmer run the other trailer. So if you are at a state tournament that we host and we help the states with, you'll see either myself or Joel and Christy with the other trailer. I talked to the state coordinators the last 2 days here at the conference and projected my plan now for Western. How many of you are out toward the west, Texas and beyond? Anybody? I mean, so we've got states out there that want 3D. There's not a lot of 3D out west. And now that we have a Western Nationals, we need to make that available to those states. So we're going to get through this year, and I'm going to equip another trailer for 2023, and I'm taking that trailer out west. I've got somebody in Ohio that is set to take my trailer and continue to do what I do here in the east, and I'll go west with a trailer. So just keep expanding, trying to offer it as many schools as we can. So who is the IBO? The IBO was developed in 1984. We're a nonprofit organization. Our goal is to promote, encourage, and foster the sport of bow hunting. We are a nonprofit. The way we raise money for promoting and protecting the sport of bow hunting is through tournaments. The IBO does 7 tournaments a year, 3D archery tournaments. We use those funds for those tournaments to go into a legal defense fund. So if something's going on in one of your areas, an anti-hunting deal, something to protect bow hunting, that somebody's coming after it, then we get involved with other like-minded organizations, Sportsmen's Alliance, different ones, to help fight those issues. So that's who we are. So it was a good fit for us to join with NASP. To partner with NASP, now we're adding an opportunity for NASP bullseye shooters, an additional opportunity in the form of 3D archery. We try to reach some students that may have become bored or not interested in that bullseye competition. Had a coach sitting here 2 sessions ago when I was in here. He said that. He said that's exactly what happened. He said some of his older kids just got to a point where they wanted something different. And we see that. Once that kid shoots that foam, they shoot that 3D, they fall in love with it. I did some tournaments this year with Center Shot. I was in Oklahoma City. And we did outdoors, had a young lady come up. She shot bullseye. She never shot 3D. Showed up, shot bullseye, and was fixing to leave. And I said, "We want to shoot 3D." "Oh, I've never done it." And her dad said, "Well, you want to do it?" So she did it. Never shot it. I took 5 minutes. Said, "Okay, here's how you play the game." She shot it. We went from there to Decatur, Alabama. She showed up. Shot it again. We left there. She showed up in Myrtle Beach, shot the open, qualified into the championship, and shot again. Just fell in love with it. So that's exactly what we're after. And then strengthen the tie between the DNR and NASP and IBO. Your state wildlife agencies typically run NASP in each state. It is extremely important that wildlife agency see a connection between these kids shooting archery and what their mission is. And being a former DNR officer, I can tell you from an agency standpoint, what interests them at the very top is one, getting kids involved in that outdoor lifestyle, but it's selling hunting license. They want to sell those licenses. So the agency can look at a kid shooting a 3D target and see that next step. I've been at a tournament where an agency director walks over on the range, and as he's watching 3D, a little girl comes off the range, 5th grade little girl, one instance I remember, walks off the range, looks at her dad sitting in the bleachers and goes, "Dad, I want to go hunt something." That fired that agency up. They realized that importance of that. And that's good for all of us that enjoy that outdoor lifestyle. So that strengthens it. And obviously it gives us an opportunity to be a partner with absolutely one of the greatest influences in the sport of archery. Numbers don't lie what NASP has done for kids. We can go through and hear all the stories of what it's done for individual kids. When you look at the millions of kids that's touched a bow because of NASP, numbers don't lie. So it allows us to be a part of absolutely one of the greatest things that's ever come through the industry. What is NASP IBO 3D? It's an extension of the educational experience that NASP provides, familiar and accessible step for NASP archers to move into 3D shooting. Using the same whistle commands, same bow, same arrow, same target, same nets. All we did is redesign the range to create something different for those ranges. It is set up local, as y'all know, local, state, national world, and at IBO events. We've got the IBO Outdoor World Championships coming up in a week and a half in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. I leave here tomorrow night and I'm going straight to Pennsylvania. And we've got the NASP IBO Outdoor World part of it. I got 200 kids coming from 13 states in a week and a half from Seven Springs. That's the highest number we've had in 5 years. At the end of all that's been going on, that shows these kids are ready to go. Archers are using that same equipment. Now when they developed this, they had to come up with a plan of how can we build this range where it complements both organizations or both programs. So when you look at NASP shoots what? A 10 and a 15. When you look at the NASP IBO 3D, that turkey sits at 10. Stone sheep sits at 15. The The 4 animals in between it sit at an unknown distance between those two. International Bow Hunting Organization, our IBO shoots, we shoot unknown distance. As a bow hunter, they used to learn how to approximate distance to make clean, ethical shots when they're hunting. So that's important to us. So we were able to combine those two. You have your 2 known distances of 10 and 15 with an approximate distance between the two. So they learn to adjust their aiming points. All of our targets are Reinhardt targets with NASP IBO scoring rings. When you look at a scoring ring, a lot of them do not realize, especially the kids don't. Y'all learn it, and sometimes we get to tournaments, and when I mention it, the kids don't realize it, that the 9 and 10 are the identical size of the 9 and 10 on your 80 centimeter bullseye target. So especially when you're looking at the turkey and the stone sheep, they go, you already know your aiming points. You got to learn how far to aim off that animal. You're not on paper, but they're at that same distance, so they're the same scoring rings. And then from there, we simply go 10, 9, and then an oblong 8. Everything else is 7. Stone turkeys are 0, horns or antlers are 0s, but everything, the lowest score is a 7. You hit the target, you got a 7. Not like a little kid at Nationals several years ago, raise your hand. I went down off the podium. Little kid looks at me and goes, "Sir, we were told we missed a target, it's 5 points." Well, there's no participation points in archery. It's a 0. So, and that was in Florida. Some of the tournaments we did this year with Center Shot, one of them was in Florida. I couldn't help but put that picture up. I will say,
I got a quick question.
Mighty nice range.
You haven't even asked questions yet. Ask the questions. Good.
Go ahead.
I notice they're facing
Yep. Each other.
each other.
Always. You don't have to. The rules say you can build your range however you want to as long as it matches, the location. But the facing of the animals could be in any direction. There is a very strategic reason why we set up that range. I can tell you, if you ever shoot, when your kids come to a tournament that we put on, whether it's a local, state, national, world, whatever, I can promise you, number one is going to be a right-facing turkey. That's beneficial for you to know. Because if I post those target positions on nastournaments.org, you can pull it up and go, okay, you tell a kid, this is where you should be shooting, knowing that it could change if I have to move people, but we face it. All right, so why do we do that? I've got one state in mind that I know at their state tournament, they face every single one of them the same direction. Okay? Well, you're in the middle of the tournament, after one end, and one, you can't see scoring rings. What are you going to do? You're just going to flip one. You'll go get another core, pull a core out, the other side of the core is in perfect shape. The reason we do it this way, there'll be a bigger picture of a range in a minute. The reason we do it that way is, let's say the stone sheep's the easiest way to describe it. Stone sheeps are always going to be touching noses. If I get up there and that stone sheep, that scoring ring is out, all I got to do is take those stone sheeps and flip them. It's a quick, easy fix. I'm using both sides. So very important that you tell your archers to practice both ways. And they do, they get in their mind. If they only practice one direction, it will blow their mind. So they need to practice shooting both directions. If you get to a tournament, you don't necessarily know. Okay? Yes, so when you shoot any of ours, from anything we do, nationals, world, whatever, you'll always see that style range, because that's for us being able to use both sides of those, swap that out. You'll never see just straight range. Okay. There's the scoring rings I talked about, I've already hit on. Just like in bullseye, obviously, if it touches the line, it is to point up. The difference with 3D is the friction of that arrow. If any of you have ever shot 3D before, it'll pull the line. Versus that paper where it just cuts, it's pretty obvious. The friction of that arrow will actually pull the line to it, which is absolutely legal. All right, so the way I look at it, if I can't see meat, what I call it, between the scoring line and the arrow is the higher one, and that is there. I can see target material between the actual line and that. But I like to put that in there just as well. There you go. Okay. So very easy. I can take the ram over here, ram there, swap them, and we're back in business. I can take that turkey, bring that turkey over here, swap that one over there, and now I got to do the cores on both sides.
So wait a minute, you said we'll always see a right-facing turkey.
If it's my range, I can take number one. It's going to be a right-facing turkey. That's going to be number one for me every time. You come to nationals, you come to worlds, you go or open championship or my worlds or a state tournament. And I built that range, or Joel Christie built that range. Number one's Bear Right Texas. It's the way we build our range.
Okay, so you say 1 through 6 will always be pointing towards the right, 7 through 12 will always be pointing to the left.
It's one of our ranges, I can guarantee it.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause that's just the way we build our ranges. We start there as number one, we're going to join those noses of those ranges. Okay? It just, for the use of the cores, it's the best way to do it. Now, how do we play the game? When an archer comes to the line, the first thing that archer is going to do when they first get up there, we talk about practice. Over on Bullseye, they get practice ends at 10 and 15. On 3D, they get 5 practice arrows on the starting target only. They walk up, let's say they start on the antelope. Walk up on number 4, 5 practice arrows, go back. They go get their arrows, they pull them, come back to the same quiver. Back to the line, they go shoot that antelope again for score. Once you score, you got to start moving. From then, you move to the right. So if I was on antelope, I'd go antelope to the deer. I'd score it, move my clipboard to the ram. Take my arrows back to the ram. Shoot the ram. Well, I know I only shoot the ram twice. Like the game of trap, I come back around and shoot the turkey. Shoot the turkey, to the coyote, to the bear, and I'm done. Shooting all 6 targets in that possession. The only person that would ever have to switch in that scenario would be if I started on the turkey on this range or this on sheep. You always move to the right, regardless of what direction an animal is facing. We've heard all kinds of stuff. You always shoot from the smallest animal to the biggest. And you shoot the direction they're facing. You've heard that kind of stuff. So you always shoot to the right, no matter what side they're facing. Why is it vital that all NASP 3D ranges are set up identical? One is safety. Everything in NASP is basically built around safety. If this range is built to the specifications, I put a copy of the range diagram on the back of that sheet, and it's also in the rules. If you look at the NASP IBO 3D rules, it's in there as well. I will never set up a range, as many as I do a year. I'm doing one next week. I will never set up a range without that in my pocket. I know those measurements, but I will have that in my pocket because I want that range to be perfect. Setup day is my stress day. I want that range perfect to the inch, or I will tear it up and start over. Tournament day is no stress. Tournament day is the reward for the hard work you do every other day. Unless I run behind. I get behind on flights and start stressing, but we typically run very fast. So the safety is the number one thing there. And then, of course, builds consistency in the program, and every archer has confidence that every range is the same. Some of you y'all remember the movie Hoosiers, where they measure the basketball court and the goal. Same thing. I want your kids to know if they shoot a state event or a local event in Nebraska, and then they come to nationals and open championship, that range is identical. And that's very important. We've had some kids show up at nationals before and tell their coaches, oh, this range is wrong. My aiming points are completely wrong. So their range is wrong. It ain't our range. Okay? It's how it was set up back home. All right? So make sure that's very important. Because it is such a different beast to set up.
The curtain.
Getting to that.
Okay.
Yep, that's one of the challenges. Absolutely.
And when I first did that, I couldn't figure out the math.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
So, okay, yeah. So, well, I'm going to talk about the challenges of, when I say challenges of the curtain, is actual setting it in diagonal. Because a lot of what I see pictures of in schools is they will have your curtain across the wall of your gym, shoot your bullseye. Well, then you drag out your 3D targets, and the turkey is now from here to the back wall from your net. Okay? It's got to be within a target. It's got to be within an arrow length. So you got to come up with those ways to fix your net to where it is by the standard. But now you measure. So if you take this measurement right here, if you do that, that's what I set off with. If you do that right there, your measurements, I got it in the feet. I'm from South Carolina. I don't fool with meters. If you go off of that right there, it is dead on the money.
But the curtain's 30 foot.
Okay? I run 50-foot curtains.
Right.
But, yeah, you just overlap, obviously. You overlap, so therefore, your distance on your diagonal is 36 foot. So it's 30 foot wide because you're 5 foot lanes. But by the time you run your diagonal, that's 36 foot.
curtain has to be longer than your normal one.
Yeah. Yeah. 'cause now
Yeah,
you get
I learned
36.
that mistake a long time ago.
Yeah, 36 foot. That's how I kind of measure myself if I've set up my range right, is when I pull the tape, start putting down the dots for the animals or the hash marks on the target line. If that thing doesn't say 36, I'm ripping tape up and starting over.
Yeah.
So that's how I make sure I'm square. If you follow that right there, I can assure you. And we moved, if you got the old one, when we first built this a couple years ago, we had the animals in between the two lines, and it showed what we thought, but I had some coaches go, you got it in front. So we changed it this year. This is brand new. This will be the rules. We backed it up. See the dots. And I'll show you the dot placement here in just a minute. All right. So there's the coyote setup. You see the dog on the floor. There'll be another picture in a minute. That dot is the placement of that animal. When I walk up behind that animal and I look dead over the top, I should be able to look it right down the middle of the 10 ring. I see that dot. And then I square it to the shooter, and I know that I'm in the same place every single time. The turkey and the coyote being lightweight, they'll move when you pull arrows. So you got to make sure they're back the way they should be. The board in the middle, what's that preventing? Bounce outs. Okay. That arrow will hit that metal stand, and it will bounce all the way past the shooter. Put something there to absorb it. That's a piece of 2x4. I got board one day, it stenciled on the match.
You know what else works really well? Is that foam that you buy, the foam that you can get, the insulate pipe at Home Depot.
I have used it. Sometimes it will still penetrate.
You don't have to put like the thicker stuff, the right size of it, and throw it out there, and you may have to replace that.
And you also have to look and use that. A lot of times it'll lift that stand up right here.
Yeah,
So
you have to cut some of the bottom off.
right now I've got a guy in Ohio that's building. I've got 2 sets in my trailer right now. Closed cell foam.
I have the cooling wheel, it's pretty good too. Cut a cooling wheel in half and sit over top of it.
Anything to catch and absorb that arrow. If that arrow bounces back, we've all seen it. I've seen them hit bullseye targets in the right places, hit pieces of wood and stuff and bounce back. But you got to create something to keep that bounce back from happening.
So that's just a
One
2-4 laid in front of that bar.
Yeah, I've got it all the way across the bar that runs, parallel to the shooter. With those up there, we've never. I hate to say that. But
Arrow might bounce about 6 inches.
So I do have a guy in Ohio right now who's building me closed cell foam ones to put down how to cut our wings. I got totes and totes, enough for nationals, 25 ranges, 2x4s in my truck. I'm trying to cut that wing down. There's the dot and placement of the animal. That's how you know I know where those targets are. I know where they're at every time I set them. That's inside Bell County Expo in Texas. That was a couple of years ago. Some of the challenges, obviously cost. That's number one. They're expensive. These targets are high. Our contract with Reinhardt, we do a 5-year contract with Reinhardt through IBO, because they got all our IBO targets as well. Our last contract we did was able to reduce that price some, but they're just expensive.
When you said Reinhardt is something.
Yep.
Maybe off topic a little bit, but do you have anything in the plans to team with Reinhardt? Because I take kids to the Reinhardt 100, and there's not a NASP stake, but I wish there were.
To do a NASP IBO 3D event in conjunction with a Reinhardt 100. We had talked about that. Early on, we had talked about that. Some of the logistics and timing, just because we're so few of us.
Now, the one in Arkansas, they let our kids sign up as youth, and so then they just shop from the state, which was great, that they allowed me to do that, but I wish that there was an actual NASP division.
Okay. So not necessarily doing a NASP IBO at an event, but have
a NASP division.
Have a NASP division, or at least a separate state for that. I can have that conversation.
Because the
That's easier.
Reinhardt 100 is big and awesome.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely.
So much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Reinhardt 100 is a great event, great fun.
So much fun. And my
So
kids love
shooting
it.
crazy big animals. That's something I can work on. I'll see time. I've been with Reinhardt this week. I'll be with them all week next week. I can have those. That's an easy conversation. Okay, because I'll go right along with our Genesis division of IBO, I'll talk about in just a second. That's an easy conversation. Yes.
Sorry, it was just a
No.
lot I had.
So current cost for a set of targets and stands is about $2,300 when I order through the NASP website. You can buy used tournament targets at Nationals, Western and Eastern Nationals. Our contract with them is they send up, we order those targets, they ship them to the venue, and we use them, and then they sell them. When they sell those tournament used targets, they've been used for one tournament, they're about $1,500. Now that's Eastern, it's about $1,500 without the stands. I think out west, we were selling with the stands for like 18 or 18.50, something like that. Or maybe I had to use a little bit
So you
less.
got to be there before to get those, or you got to catch them?
So what you do is you will shoot me an email. I can get you in touch, but you will actually contact Leah with Reinhardt, and Leah can let you know what she'll probably start doing probably about February every year. She'll start that list. And the way they do it is people call and say, hey, I want to buy a set of targets at Louisville or Salt Lake City. She will put it on the list. You will prepay for it. When the tournament is over, my lane officials bring them targets out. They pack them up. They stack them up in a hole there. Reinhardt comes down with their pad paper. When they open those doors, you drive in, load them up, and out the door you go. So yeah, so that's that's the easiest, most effective way of getting those targets at a decent cost. I will tell you, if anybody that's sitting in this room, if you took this session today, if you order a set of targets by December the 1st this year, you will put on the form that you give Michelle with NASP, Raptor 2021, your stands will be free. You order a set of targets by December 1st of this year, Reinhardt's going to give you the stands, Raptor 2021. So that's if you're ordering them, this year. We did December 1st, gives them the time to wrap up their fiscal year there. Reinhardt's been great to work with. Obviously they're one of our big sponsors, one of our scholarship sponsors. Last couple of years, I have not gone to our sponsors and put my hand out. We know how every business, I grew up in a family-owned tire business. I know what the challenges of businesses have been this last year with COVID. I called Tanya with Reinhardt a couple of weeks ago, and I said, look, we haven't done scholarship money this year, just haven't been any. And I said, I would like to do something at Outdoor World. I said, can we do 1,000? She said, 5,000. So we're doing $5,000 next week in Seventh Springs, Pennsylvania, because of Reinhardt. So they're a great sponsor. Obviously, another challenge is storage. And there's no, it is what it is, all right? But that is a challenge. Y'all's PE classroom closets are full as they are. Stacking up your bullseye targets. My wife was elementary school principal. I met my wife through NASP. I tried it at her BAI and all her staff. And that's how I met my wife, was through training at her school. I know it is a challenge of storing those targets. And then proper net placement, that's what we talked about a while ago, is you've got to get that net out of the bag. If you are you bringing out those 3D targets and you're putting that turkey, 8 yards, 9 yards out from the net, one skip off the back of that turkey into a brick wall and it bounces back or whatever, administration is not going to be looking kindly on that. So you got to look at how you place that net. We've seen, I don't know all of these situations, but I've seen some people that went ahead and put the volleyball sponson hole in the floor where they can bring that sponson out to that point and tie off. I've heard of changing the cable where they just undo the cable that went across for bullseye and ran the cable across. Of course, we use the poles. We use basically, just like we do at Nationals, because I've got enough in my trailer, bases, poles, uprights, and all that to run 9, 10 ranges in my trailer.
What do you do with to protect the poles from bouncing back, something bouncing back on them?
They get hit, but now it's also placement of the poles.
Okay.
Between
Okay.
I go,
between animals.
I go one here, one there, one there. And I try to put it in between every other animal.
Yes, sir.
They still.
Oh, yeah. Volleyball pads, I'm full if I have.
Yeah.
Volleyball pads.
Years ago at Nationals, NASP put us way down in the western wing of Kentucky Expo Center. It's got columns, okay? we had to do things around those columns, and you do whatever you gotta do. But yeah, now that's how I place my poles. I do one on each end, and I'll place one here, one here. And that reduces the amount of arrows that hit my poles. They still get hit. Because every now and then I'll be, up there calling a tournament, I hear, ding, I'm going, how did they hit that?
Do you buy the poles with the curtain?
So what I do now, you go through a local
Pipe and drape.
pipe and drape, people that do pipe and drape for convention centers and things like that. We got one out of Atlanta that we use, and we buy our stuff from and pick it up. They'll ship it if we go buy it. Me living in Georgia, I pick it up. But just look for pipe and drape. Get bases, make sure your bases are heavy enough. I've got 24 by 24 steel bases so they don't fall over. And then 8 foot uprights. So you can get one set.
You can run, like if you were just gonna run a tournament or something like that, and just needed them for one time, you can get a hold of a local, like a local place around here, just run for the weekend, and they'll come deliver them to you. But if you were gonna run, if you knew that you were, because that's what we did our first year, and I'll tell you what, you will not believe how easy this is to set up. This thing that he's got put together, this thing, these measurements, if you lay a tape measure down, it is super easy to set up. We set up 3 ranges like that, like
We shoot 3D.
you can set up 3 ranges in an hour. With these measurements, with the tape and just little stickers on the floor, it is super easy to set up. Some people,
I haven't
done it all.
And I read them when I was with the state. I read them for my state tournament.
Yeah, and then we made enough money to have tournaments that we bought. Then we have our own now that we bought from Georgia Expo, and they're
That's what I use. Georgia Expo's the way.
They're really nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Georgia Expo's the
So
way.
now we can use them in practice, and we have them for our practices, so we're able to set up good, safe knots for practices all the time. Because the arrows will fly if you don't have those knots.
That's exactly right. Now, if you're outdoors, there may be times where you don't need a net. Seven Springs, Pennsylvania, where I'm going next week for our world, that's Seven Springs back about 3-4 years ago, 2017. No net. I'm against the ski slope. I don't need a net. Okay? Go out and pick the arrows up. But you may be somewhere where you need the net to catch the arrows. You don't need it for safety. I didn't need it for safety here, nothing behind. We had a strong wind blowing that day. I ran a straight line net behind it, dropped it down about half, pretty much caught every arrow. I did that just to catch the arrow. Didn't need it for safety. I just didn't want to have to go in the woods. Snowshoe, if any of you came to Outdoor World at Snowshoe, West Virginia, at the mountain up there, the 3D, my NASP IBO 3D range was sitting on top. If we had not run a net like that, every lost arrow would have been off the mountain, literally to the bottom. So it depends on your situation, on where you're setting up, how that net needs to be. Talking about state tournaments, when we first started, 6 states, very first year, 2015, 6 states did a state 3D. Going down to 2019, which is the last true data that I use, 2019 was 27 states. I can tell you the virtual tournament this year, the virtual NASP tournament, very surprised. I was not expecting the number of kids to shoot virtual that they did. I was like, man, we're doing virtual, we're dead. I just never would have thought. Here we go, 4,000 kids shooting 3D virtual. 33 states. Kids were shooting from 33 states this year in a virtual. So that's very promising that those other states are picking up. And what also helped is we made the rule where if you shoot a state 3D, you get tier preference for nationals. So that helps promote them to shoot that state 3D. All right, just like you're talking about the R100 creating something for the Genesis bow. We did that with IBO a couple years ago. Because we know we have hundreds of thousands of kids that own the Genesis bow. Why make mom and daddy spend $1,000 on a big bow to go try 3D archery? Let's get them hooked with what they have. Show up at a tournament. So we created a Genesis class. They show up at a IBO tournament. They have IBO score, shoot unknown distance, max 20 yards. They're out there shooting on the same ranges as everybody else. Okay? They might be on a practice range warming up with pros. Okay, 11 to 1,200 shooters. But then they have the Genesis class. They shooting from their own state. And these kids are amazing. This very well could become the largest class of the IBO, just on the pure numbers that we have. The kid who won our national championship in 2020 and this coming year, he'll be recognized at World. We'll do our national championship awards at World next week. He's from West Virginia. Did I hear somebody from anybody from West Virginia? So Clay Tenney from West Virginia, he had a traumatic brain injury. Was told he would never participate in a sport again. He started shooting at school. The coach at NASP, his NASP school coach, got him into shooting. And it took off. And it became his life. And that kid is amazing. So he shows up at IBO shoots, shooting unknown distance with a Genesis bow, fingers just like he came off a NAS range, and he had lighted up shooting nearly even scores. So he's the national championship last year. What's neat about that is we do what's called best of best. We have 34 classes in the IBO. So at Worlds next week or a week and a half, we'll have a shoot-off for like $2,000, where all 34 of them will shoot head-to-head against each other. He will be out there with his Genesis bow shooting head-to-head with them and loving it. Okay? And all those adults are amazed by him. I've tried to get pros. When I've done a tournament, a NASP IBO tournament at an IBO shoot, I've tried to get pros to stop by and grab a Genesis bow and shoot the kids. They won't do it. There ain't no way.
Embarrassing.
They're embarrassing.
Yeah.
They're amazed at what these kids can do. So that Genesis class has been very successful. They do a national championship, world championship, belt buckle. They're out there shooting every target we have in the IBO. It's been really, really cool to see. So, shooter of the year, he'll be shooter of the year this year, which means all his entry fees for next year is completely paid for. So it's pretty neat. All right. Any questions? Let's just anything you can think of, range-wise, program-wise. I tell you, I got coaches from all over the country. You feel free. You got my number. Text me, email me, call me. It happens all the time. You're in the middle of setting up, call me. I can tell you. So Lou Compton in the back. Lou works for NAS, is also the Maryland State Coordinator. Lou and Kevin were in Canada setting up for the last All-Star tournament we've ever had. Was up in Canada. And Kevin called me. Tournament director called me. Now tell me about this setup again. And I can tell you, because it is different. It's not hard. It's just different. And, setting up a bullseye range, you get used to that. So I have a lot of coaches that will send me pictures. They'll send me a picture. How's this look?
Not being fair, we did set up on a race track and we had a car races do it.
Yeah, and that was pretty neat. They had to do both tournaments in an ice rink. So they had to go in and lay down, they shot bullseye first. So they laid 3D lines down first, bullseye tape on top, shot bullseye, ripped the bullseye up, then shot 3D. So a little bit of a challenge.
That was pretty.
Yeah. So, all right, anything to read? Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna tell you one thing that we discovered, we had some kids who were, they got screwed up when they were moving
Mm-hmm.
and ended up shooting different animals and they should have whatever. So we discovered that it was easier the minute that you shot on the turkey, you wrote a little bitty T beside your first shoot. The second shoot, you wrote an initial, and that was the only way to keep the kids on track, because they go, what did I just shoot? And really, this is middle school. So, so they would get confused, and so that was the only way, and that helped us tremendously to keep them on track as they were shooting. Because the movement confused the crap out of them.
It does, because it's so different, especially for the newest that never done it. Once they move, you see that at every tournament. You start a flight, and then once you get past that second animal, they're like, oh, we got it. And I have we'll have a national tournament where a team shows up and moves their own direction. I had a coach at Nationals a couple years ago, well, when did you change this? Didn't change it. We always move the same direction no matter what.
That's where I try to explain to the kids that I'll say if you're 1 through 6, all 12 of you stay on range to 1 through 6. You're on targets 1 through 6. This year, all of my 3D tournaments, all of our tournaments they were virtual tournaments, but we would shoot at my school, but we would submit the scores with other schools around the state. And then we'd have 7 through 12, so we had 2 ranges set up, so we had 12 targets. So I would say if you're on 7 through 12, you stay on the right half and you stay on the left half.
I always tell them, don't shoot the ram twice. That's why I said, don't shoot the ram twice. And we have had that, but they pick up on it fairly quick. Yeah, it's just different. The biggest thing is the errors. A lot of times they'll move the clipboard, they'll move their scoreboard over, but then they'll go back to the same quicker. They're used to going back to that same quicker. And they get used to it. So it's just a little bit. Anything. Yeah, our contract's pretty solid. We love the targets. It's just, I mean, these targets are amazing. I mean, not on this. The NASP IBO has never been anything but. IBO, we shot McKenzie's for years and then went. But no, we are very happy with Reinhardt. We still run the contract, like 5-year contracts, but that target's just so amazing. I mean, it's expensive, no doubt. But, you know, when I can start a whole season, I run 15 tournaments a year, something like that. If I start a state season with fresh cores, I will make it to nationals without replacing them because, you know, you're using both sides. But their foam is really good. They're good, solid. I mean, I stand at a Bell County Expo in Texas or Louisville and Kentucky Expo, and I stand up in my trailer and I grab that pair and I throw them out. Nothing breaks. Ears don't break off. You know, so it's durability, much less the way I stack them. You're talking about storage. In front of my trailer, 48 of them in my trailer, and I have a picture. Okay, there's a picture on the wall of how they have to go in there. They ain't gonna fit. It's like this in a big cargo net. So everything labeled. So yeah, we're very happy with it. Much less, here's another problem. Who in here has already bought a set of targets? Y'all will kill me if I call you and we're switching targets. Okay? Schools
What's the deal on the cores? When you order new cores, you get a deal.
Yeah, so schools are my number one concern. Anytime we ever talk about targets and price, y'all are doing this. We got to make them available. I will tell you, when I talked to Tanya the other day, is anybody waiting on a set right now? Anybody got any order that they haven't received? There are some. We got quite a few that's been ordered that haven't received. They are still running behind from COVID. They are catching up. I talked to her the other day and I asked her, I said, if a coach asked me, if I order, how long should it take for you to get them? She told me, she said, we're running correct 3 weeks. I said, when are we going to be there? When are we going to be back in 3 weeks? She told me they hope by September they're going to be called up. If not October, they're called up. They did build 3 more sets of molds just for us. So once they get back up and running like they should, we should be in good shape. Now, price, again, when we get to our contract with them next year with IBO, and then I promise you, that'll be a spot for us to talk to them again. And we do that as much as we can. It's just inherently an expensive game. Still cheaper than anything else in the school. $100 to get it to cheerleading. I'll take this. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I got a question. We got a new program as far as us buying a targets. It's going to be a little while. Would it be possible to get those on paper? The picture with the kill?
If you talk to Bernie, if you talk to Bernie Morrell makes a slip cover to go over your bullseye targets. That is a great way for you to get your kids introduced to it. Is it an official? It's not NASP IBO. That is a perfect way for you to introduce the kids, especially getting used to that rotation. You can set those bullseye targets just like the range and move that net up, and you can get them used to it. It's no replacement for 3D. I'll tell you, during all the virtual stuff last year, I got the question a lot. Can we use those for virtual? And my answer was no. Okay, 3D is 3D is 3D. But that is an absolutely perfect way to introduce your kids to it and then get the targets.
Okay.
And those backbone 7s are going to stick in the flash target.
There you go. I held a fast line on that because I said it's not going to be fair to schools that have them. It's just different. an 80-centimeter bullseye target is an 80-centimeter bullseye target.
Distances getting
Pretty
busy
easy to
or something else.
And
It's
I feel
easy
very
for
firm
those
line.
covers of this a lot.
Do look for some more virtual stuff. Here's what we've been talking this week. I would like to do some virtual stuff. Nothing, I'm talking just early season. Let's go fall and just do something. Get kids shooting sooner, maybe a little more often. Just do some cheap virtual fun stuff. Get some good prizes leading up to tournament season. You know, if that's something coaches would be interested in. Maybe something for PE classes. Man, I'm game for anything. We can get kids
When we
shooting.
got our targets to, well, before COVID 2 years ago, I want to run a 3D tournament in November, the first week of November, we had 200 kids sign up. It was nuts, it was crazy, so it's what they want to do.
Good. When I used to teach BAIs, when I'd go into all the schools and do a BAI when I was a state coordinator, I contacted, how many of you are BAITs? I used to contact a local pro shop, wherever I went, whatever part of South Carolina I was in, I'd contact a local pro shop and say, hey, I'd like for you to come teach the arrow maintenance and bow maintenance at my BAIT class. I'd give them the equipment. That way, my BAIs, your teachers, were making a connection to the local bow shop guy. And if that local bow shop didn't jump on that, I would tell teachers to go find another bow shop, because he don't understand the importance of what this program is doing for his company, because you know what's next. So yeah, I'd reach out to those bow shops. If they're helping with NASP, that's huge. Anything else? Thank y'all very much. And again, if you need anything whatsoever, please